Miss Malini, and I'm sitting here at La Mille with the absolutely incredibly talented Prabal Gurung, who actually is always very elusive and all over the world. So it's so nice to have you back in Bombay.
I'm very happy to be here, and thank you. And I'm a huge fan of Miss Malini, and so it's great. Feels great to be back. It's just and the story is amazing.
The story is incredible. Now, a lot of people find you very elusive, so let's give them a little background, okay?
All right.
So tell us where you're from and how you made it to the point where you're now dressing like Oprah and Michelle Obama.
Well, I was born in Singapore and I grew up in Nepal, but the majority of my time was spent in India, in Delhi and Bombay. I went to school here and I worked here. And, I always say the person that I am and the designer that I'm, like, India has a huge, humongous part of it because, whether it was from culturally or whether it was the big Bollywood films, it really shaped who I am. And then I traveled to London, Australia for a little bit, and then I went to New York and I've been there for 16 years. I worked for a while. I worked with Donna Karan, Bill Blass, and I launched my collection 7.5 years ago. And here I am today.
It's incredible. And I have to say, you're one of the most down-to-earth designers. And considering all the things you've done, how did you keep it real?
I think I'm surrounded by great friends who are who've been my friends forever, and my family. I speak to my mom lives in Nepal, so I speak to my mom Monday through Friday every morning. So I get into car and while I'm heading to work, and it's nighttime there, so I call her up. And sometimes it's it's literally mundane stuff like, what are you eating? What did you eat? What serious stuff, and so it's kept me grounded. But beyond that, what is also, I've been very clear about the kind of designer I've always wanted to be. And it was never, I didn't become a designer because I wanted to be famous. Fame was never a goal for me. I wasn't interested in it. I was just like, I really was passionate about what I wanted to do. I wanted to make it. I wanted to see if I could be successful at, making a living out of what I love doing. And fame was a byproduct of what I did. And so, I'm fortunate enough that my clothes have resonated with all these incredible women, and my business is growing, and I've been able to dress this incredible women. But I just I'm very happy. If all was taken, if I was to just sit there and create, that is my pure joy. So that keeps me grounded, and the fact that I pretty much understood early on that the work that I do, the passion that I have been able to create an audience and a platform that, and I was able to use that platform to talk about another issue that was really important through my foundation about girls' education of, underprivileged children. And so which we started with 12 girls, we've gone to more than 300. And, in 5 years since we started, we've been able to impact more than 15,000 lives. And so for me, an industry, fashion, which and I'm sure anyone who works in fashion, we are always at the mercy of people's perception about it being frivolous, right? It being like it's fashion, but for me, taking something that's considered frivolous, being able to use that as a platform to do something very substantial, like what I've been able to do through my foundation, keeps me completely grounded, and so that's what it is, and I just love it. And life is, I take it. I'm very focused, determined, guy, but I'm also don't take life too seriously.
That's really clutch. That's the main thing.
I think it has to be, because my goal is to be present, to be really present every day, and to really understand what's happening and to take it all in.
And I've always wanted to ask you, what was the first ever garment that you made that you were proud of, and who was that one person that you dressed and you were like, oh my God, the first one?
So it's so funny. So when I launched my collection, fall 2009, it was right, Bill Blass had closed, and I was doing it, and I started with zero investment. I had my little bit of savings and went on unemployment, and that's how it really started from the scratch. And the first dress that I draped was this red dress with this it's this double satin, this big bow dress. And then I did the presentation, and I remember, so Women's Wear Daily, which comes out, during fashion, every day, and during Fashion Week, there's the 7 days cover is but it's usually people like, let's say, Ralph Lauren, Donna, Calvin, Mark, Michael, that. With my first collection, they gave me the cover. It was that red dress. And that red dress was, I would say, the dress that was worn by the first celebrity, who happened to be a dear friend of mine, Zoe Saldana, for her first big movie, Star Trek, and I still remember. It was like really, it kind of, for me, it was, I can't help but feel there was something so pure about how it all happened. It was the first dress on the cover. Zoe, who's a dearest friend of mine, we started our career similar at the same time. Her big first film, and that was a like big moment for me. And at that time I did feel like, oh, she's a friend, so she wore it. It felt personal. But the biggest moment for me, I would say, is when there's several ones. One was when Demi Moore wore the dress and she tweeted about it. That's how I joined my Twitter, and my first tweet was to thank her, and I got like 500 followers, and I was like, okay, I got to do something about it. And then it was like, the First Lady and Duchess of Cambridge, and that kind of like solidified, And then Oprah. I mean, there's so many there, and then Oprah was equally important because she's a powerful woman, and she flew me into Chicago and to meet with her, and it was really. I've had so many stories like that, like one day I'll write a book about it.
Oh my God, you have to. And one of the things actually my fashion team told me that we love that you said, a beautiful woman with brains, a lethal combination, a thinking man sex symbol. And I think it's very rare for especially a designer, anyone in fashion, to call smart sexy. So, what is your thinking on that? And, how do you feel that women can sort of really empower themselves?
Yeah. I always say, the reason I said all that stuff is because I was surrounded by women like that, and I've always believed this thing about women is the biggest power and the strength that it comes from embracing your femininity, because that is the tool that you have, to your advantage, like besides the other stuff, besides the fact that women are intelligent, complex, complicated, and layered and interesting. And, I always feel like I'll watch my friends now, now they're pregnant and giving birth and everything, the way they juggle. Men, we don't do that. We go to work, we have our stress, and we don't have all these other stuff. Like, because the dynamics of a man and a woman is, if a father is not so, like, let's say neglecting the child, it's like, oh, he's just working, he's busy. If a mother does that, if she's working, she's just a bad mother, right? So I always look at that, and for me, and that's hence the hashtag I keep on using, femininity with a bite. For me, I've always realized that, if women understood that you don't have to compromise fashion or really, truly loving everything that makes you feel beautiful, look beautiful, and to be I would love for women to be at a place where the hour or 2 or 3 that they take to get dressed up is not something that they feel guilty about or feel like frivolous about, rather that truly understand it's your time for yourself. You're really loving yourself. You're, it's a self-respect. It's a ceremonial, ritualistic process, which I really love. That I think it's important, especially in this day where the speed, like everything is happening. I think that quiet moment is something that women, I wish, would really embrace and rule with it. I think the world would shift completely when good, intelligent, qualified women are in position of power, because they look at the world differently.
You usually end with gowns, and you ended with pantsuits. So tell us why you did that.
So this election, has been an interesting one, and a very important one, because it's not just a U.S. election; it's a world election. That's what I feel like, and especially this one. And I've been a very active, vocal supporter of Hillary Clinton, not because she's a woman. She's a qualified, extremely assured, experienced presidential candidate out there, and who, the fact that she happens to be a woman is an important one, because while as the reality of her becoming a president becomes nearer and clear to all of us, we take it for granted. But there are so many places around the world women's rights are constantly compromised. And so I was reading a lot about it, and if you're in the heat of it, especially living in New York and in America, you feel it. You feel a country divided, and I've never seen like that, And a woman who, who's, I would say, downfall, or like, let's say her flaw is that she's not charming enough, or she's not relatable. And I keep on saying, I don't need my leader to be relatable. I need my leader to be able to lead. I need my leader to be able to, I don't need a charming one. I need her to be able to, or him to be able to, take the country to the next level. And I always feel like, charming and this and that is all the stuff that people who have all the time to do it, and she's intelligent enough. So, and as I was doing that, I was reading this book called from Gloria Steinem, and the biggest feminist one of the biggest feminists from the 70s, and her book was so empowering. And I'd met her at the it was at the opening night of Color Purple, the play, and I was there was Oprah and all these people and everyone, and so I was seated in the same row, 2 seats away was Gloria Steinem, and she's been my hero for a longest period of time. And I've met so many people. I've never felt so nervous meeting. I went up to her and I was like shaking. I said, I can't even tell you the impact that you've had, because for me, it has allowed, as a man, it has allowed me to, her drive and determination and her goals have allowed me to really look at women completely differently, And so we had the conversation. So all that stuff came to a collection that I wanted to truly celebrate about options. That's what I think. And, in fashion, and I was talking to someone earlier, the very fact that we as designers, I as a designer, that I want to do is being able to give options to women. And the choice that you make in itself is the first step to equality. That because a lot of people don't have, a lot of women in a lot of parts of the world don't have that choice to even say, this is how I want to dress. And so, and with that pantsuit was pretty much statement I wanted to make, because it was my ode to Hillary. It was very much, it was and because I'm really enthralled and impressed by her, and and also it was also an options giving to women, like you don't cocktails, and it doesn't mean anything, it can be anything you want it to be. It doesn't need to be dictated by anyone. And I will tell a story about Hillary Clinton. Like this was before she announced her running for president of America. I met her at this party, Dan von Furstenberg's book launch, and she was like, walking around, and she was just like, like eating, like snacks, and I went up to her and I said, "Hi, Mrs. Clinton. I'm Prabal Gurung," and she looked at me. "I know who you are. You're a designer from Nepal," and I was just like, wow. So that I was just like. I said, and I turned to my friend, she knew who I was. And that's what I said, I was just like, because, for me, and I mean, why does she? And she's like, and I said, really? And it says, yes, my daughter wears your clothes. And so that was, and I was like really impressed by that. And then I said to her, we had a little bit of a chat, and I said, like I said about my mother, like, I was a big fan of hers. And I said, when we're ready for you, when are you going to run? And she's like, oh, really? That's all she said. And then when she ran for the, and there's one like I'd say fundraising thing that I'd gone to, and and I got to, and she saw me. She's like, "Hey," she was giving me a big hug, and I said, "You said it. Here I am." Yeah, so it was. So for me, as a boy from Nepal who lived in India, grew up in Nepal and here, and all I wanted to do was fashion and design and make clothes. Rest of it just is a byproduct, and it's just, and so like I couldn't have planned that Hillary Clinton moment, or I couldn't have planned, I took my, as I told you, my mom and my niece to White House to meet the First Lady, and where Meryl Streep and Michelle Obama was talking about girl power, and to watch my mother, who was a big advocate, to be validated by what she had been advocating all her life, and my 11-year-old niece being able to take that. And these things I can't plan. These things just happened, and I was so grateful for those, So, it's a long answer, but, for me, what I put out there in terms of like, my love and my respect and my celebration of women and the the power that they have, that you all have, is something that stems from within and from my childhood. And I always say, I've always said this, I'm a proud feminist man. I really am.
I love that. And one last message for all the MissMalini readers: what's the future of fashion? What should they be wearing?
The future of fashion is in your hands, and you should be wearing what makes you feel comfortable. And once you're there, I'd say go for it. Go push it a little bit. Give yourself an hour to explore, because I think a curious mind is the mind that will conquer the world.
So remember, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe, like it again, and thank you so much.
You're welcome, and all the best. Yeah.